All right, I think we are rocking and rolling. Hello, fellow Sublime Text Fanatics. OdatNurd here. Welcome to the Wednesday package development live stream where we will be attempting to finish one final major feature before we embark upon trying to turn this package into an actual dependency the way it's supposed to be used instead of this hybrid package dependency thing that we have going on right here. And well, the current plan for this is going to be rather interesting because while the overall plan for my live streams is that I don't actually have a plan per se, and I just try to live develop this the way I would if I just sat down. Normally, I do actually spend some time thinking about the solutions that I like to try to implement, but this time I was so busy at work that I didn't even do that. So this is going to be perhaps an exciting failure or success in implementing extra features on top of the history system that I already have implemented. And as we can see, I have a couple of things open here. I've sort of been quote unquote cheating by refreshing myself a little bit with how this thing actually works. I mean, I have a pretty good idea, but at the lowest level, try to decide what the best way to go might be. So, without further ado, let me just go ahead and press this button over here that makes an introduction appear. And we are ready to rock and roll here. Now, let's just get the stuff out of the way. I'm doing live streams twice a week for the rest of November, transitioning into doing at least a minimum of 1 hour of live streaming every day throughout the entire month of December, where we'll be working on a Sublime Text package from scratch for my Devember project. I'm still trying to decide which of my couple ideas I'm going to try to pull off there. And going into the new year, probably going back to one live stream a week and bringing back actual videos on my other channel, the OdatNurd channel, which is linked down in the description below, where I just create tutorial videos and informational videos for Sublime Text. So you can subscribe and on that channel if you like. And this channel is just for live streams, so people that just want to see the edited videos don't get completely hammered by nonstop lengthy live stream notifications. And I'm pretty sure I scheduled the live stream properly this week, but YouTube forgot about it and removed it. Shame on you, YouTube. Shame on you. Maybe this has something to do with me moving my default studio experience to the new beta studio from the other one. I don't know. In any case, let us discuss what is actually theoretically, quote unquote, fingers crossed, going to happen in this particular live stream. Now, if you've been following on in these streams, you know that in the help system here, there is a little bit of a history mechanism already in place, whereby, as we can see, I'm just here looking at the API documentation. And if I put the cursor in some particular, location and follow a link, I get to see that topic show up, and I can navigate to another one to come here, and I can navigate again to go here. And now if we look in the help menu here, we can see that we can go back to Sublime Text and we can't go forward. And there are key bindings here, Alt left and Alt right, which mimic the ones used in the browser. And if I'm remembering correctly, those keys are slightly different per platform. I'm not sure if I've gone ahead and done that yet because I do most of my development on Linux and there hasn't been a public release yet. But I'm going to press Alt left and we see the view brings us back to exactly where we were before, including resetting the cursor position. And now if we go into the menu, we can see we can go back to region text and forward to window.txt, which is the file that we were just in. And as a matter of fact, I can go back one more time, and there we are in that one. And here we are back where we originally started. And I can also, of course, go forward through and notice that it's also restoring the selection as it enters history elements. And that's powered by essentially this code here. which is navigate help history, which is responsible for doing stuff with history entries. This the hyperhelp navigate command, which has a follow history as the navigation that you are trying to pull off, and um, this thing over in this one, update help history, which is actually the thing that updates the help view. And this is actually called, as we can see here, show help topic actually is, or can, I should say, invoke this update help history thing. That's why it has an argument for whether it should update history or not. The default for that value is true, so every time you follow a link, a new history element gets added to the end of the history list. But because we're using it while we're navigating the history, we tell it to keep its grubby hands off of the history. And as a matter of fact, I believe if I jump like so, I end up with another copy of it over here due to weird bugs in Sublime, but that's okay. I can close this when I'm done. And there's the argument named history. Let's go ahead and go like so. There's a lot of uses of it, and here we can see if they were supposed to do something with the history, update it. Anything else happen in this thing? If no, yeah, update the history to track the new file, but only if the help view is already existed. And that's an important distinction there because, and I go up here and do view settings. We can see the two settings that are used here, and the first is hyperhelp hist, which contains a list of lists, if you will, that are the history entries. They have the package that the history entry represents, the file within that package that it is going to display, and then viewport information, I believe, and then cursor information. And that's actually available here in the history data package file viewport caret. So when the help view is initially created and displays the help view for the first time, it adds this initial entry before you've done anything. And then every time you follow it, a new entry gets added onto the end of the list. And in addition to that, there is this argument, or this setting, the hyperhelp history position, which I got to focus the help view for it to actually have any value. And we can see it's at 0, which means we are looking at the index.txt file. And yes, we are. And I'm going to go ahead a couple here, 0, 1, 2. And now we can say 0, 1, 2. That's the Sublime API file. And that's the position of that there. And basically, from this point, anytime update help history is invoked, and I just read the comment for that just a second ago in one of these particular files, or this one here. Maybe I didn't read that. Maybe that was before I read. If we were told we should add a new history entry to the end of the history list, i.e. we followed a topic to another file, but we're not at the end of the history, then we've reached a position where we're in, position 0. We're looking at this entry in the history right here. This isn't the end of the history. I can go ahead one more to that window.txt. But here at this position, I'm not at the end of the list. So if I was to follow a link, like say to sheet, then we can see when I do this, the history changes. Now the last element isn't window, it's sheet. It threw away all of the history entries after the place where I currently was and replaced it with a new one instead, because history has branched. You can no longer go forward to the place where you used to be because you've used your DeLorean to go back in time and history has moved forward in the interim. Now, the general ideas here are in no particular order. As we can see here, when we are told to append an item to the history, we truncate all of the history after this particular point in the history list if we are not at the end. Otherwise, we add something to the end. So we're doing this. The history position goes up because we are going to be adding a new item to the history. But perhaps in theory, we don't want this to just grow unbounded absolutely forever. Because if you keep a help view open for a long time, you could have a very large history of stuff. Now, these settings are persisted in the Sublime session file. So uh, your session or your project, depending on whether you have a project for a thing or it's just a regular window, would that would get bigger over time. That's going to use up more memory. On the whole, I'm not super worried about this as a feature. I think if it was told to truncate, here is the point where it would decide to just throw the beginning element off the list and leave the history position alone so that everything shifts left one position and then a new one comes in. Should be fairly easy to do, but I want to think on that a little bit more because maybe we want a setting for that particular item. Um, some people might want more help history than others. We also, because I believe theoretically me and just a few other people that know about this package are actually using it on any sort of consistent basis. At least I hope that's the case because development is breaking things here, there, and everywhere as we implement new features in these live streams. We don't actually know, are people going to leave this thing just always open? Because remember, we do have the ability to, while we're in a plugin file, hit a command and immediately jump to an appropriate help topic, even if there is no help view. I can still do the exact same thing as such. So maybe that isn't something that really matters all that much. So that's sort of low on the list. The other thing that we can do is try to clear all of the history that exists. Now, because I just opened that window for the first time, we can see I'm at the beginning of the history, and there's just that one initial entry for the file that I told it to open. And um, the reason that these are both 0, even though they're something up there, is because when the history entry is created, it's created knowing that this is the package, this is the topic, this is the viewport, this is the caret position. Those are both initialized to nothing. And as part of the update of the history, when you navigate away, the first thing it does, this update history code, and do I actually have that open around in here somewhere? Update history. I can't remember what the dang thing is called now. Oh, yeah, update help history. That one. It's in help.py. I haven't actually looked at that one. Okay. Oh, sorry. It's over in this tab here. There's the one. I knew I should have had it around here somewhere. What was I even talking about there? I've completely forgotten. Oh yeah, this. When you navigate to a new location, the first thing it does before setting up a new history entry is saving the current cursor position and view into the current history entry. So this doesn't have to have anything initially because it's the initial thing in the history. So we can see that looks like that. When I follow this to a new thing, automatically the viewport and the cursor position were updated in that entry, and then the new one was added. And here it actually has a position just because this part is added after it's navigated to the appropriate topic, so it captures that information right away. But when I navigate back, you'll see it restores to the position that it was before I left, and then it comes here. The same thing happens in forward as it happens in reverse. So if I move the selection down here to the word module, when I go back, the cursor is now in settings because that's where it was when I left. And when I go back forward, the cursor is still back in module there. But there is a bit of a history here. We can see I can go back at least one item, and we can see down here that there are two. So another command we could try to implement is something that clears all of the history, which I think should throw away everything but the last history element and reset the history position to 0. And everything should just work from there. That's also fairly lowish priority. Maybe we start on that one first just to get our feet wet, and we'd have to add something to the menu to that effect. But the real thing that I'd like to do here is here right now, if I push question mark, we see the table of contents for this help file in a quick panel. I can also press I, which opens the index for all known topics in this help package here in the quick panel for me to filter. So I can type view cell to see all of the things that match that, or like so, and find the appropriate thing and jump there. Maybe there should be a key, and I don't know what it would be. Let's say H. That opens a similar panel that shows you all of these help items, and picking one automatically jumps you to that particular location. That seems like it might be interesting to be able to skip back and forth on a key like H. And maybe we also want to have that in the menu here. So along with just saying that we can go back and forward, there could be a list of the last, say, 10 history entries. So something along these lines is what we're going to work on in the live stream tonight. And this is what I would call the last major feature. I mean, as you probably have seen, I have this to-do list. It has a lot of stuff that could or should happen. Most of them are sort of incidental to actually getting this to a state where it can be its own dependency. Because what we want to do is try to stabilize on what the core is going to look like, because the file and command, the code in the commands file is going to be special. It's not going to be, it'll be part of the dependency, but um, it's it's going to be sort of bootstrapped out into its own package, and the code in the core is the part that's going to be in the dependency, and it's going to be really hard to update. Um, So that's enough yammer yammering. This undoes how I did stuff super fast last time. So let's just hop in on trying to do something here. And we've familiarized ourselves with history and how it works. These are the two main settings. This is a list of history data items. This is the list of those. Um, we could even do a search for here to see, but I'm pretty sure that adding a help file or opening a help file creates one, and navigating to a new topic adds one, but using show help topic and setting history to false causes it to jump to that position. So navigate help history seems like the place that we want to do something with to actually jump to a specific help location, because it's going to know how to navigate to the appropriate topic. We just need to modify it a little bit so that instead of just being able to go forward and backwards, it can go to any potential index as possible. And I'm not sure what the best way to do that is, because right now it's just saying previous, which is true or false, to know that if it should go forward or backwards. It could be an offset, and everywhere that previous is true, it could be +1, and everywhere that it's minus, it could be -1. Um, that has some ramifications on this code here that tries to make sure you're only at one particular end, which is neither here nor there. Maybe we want a different version of this same thing, or maybe we want to have a mode parameter here, and the mode would default to a relative to go forward and backward, and previous is a true or false the way it is now, and perhaps the mode for the operation could be absolute, in which case the argument that you provide instead of being prev would be named something else, would specify an exact history index to go to. Um, but let's start off with, say, the H command opening the complete history in a panel. Um, that seems like a good place to start. So maybe we'll do that. Hyperhelp current help command. Oh yeah, that's the thing that tells you the package that you're currently displaying help for. Um, Maybe as just a side note to this, I'm kind of surprised that it doesn't display the name of the help package, the human readable name. For example, if I did edit this help index, it has a description for what the package is supposed to be for, and that's there. Well, I think I already created a branch for history extensions. So maybe we'll just drop back to main. It's this is one of those things where that's kind of bugging me. I don't think actually that I had this part when I implemented that way back when. Um, yeah, that menu item might get particularly wide, but that's neither here nor there because this is the hyperhelp menu. So let's go ahead and do that. If package is not no, no. So it gets the current help package from the window, return no help format, which is something that was passed. Otherwise, yeah, because the menu entry has the particular thing there. So we don't necessarily want the package here. Let's just fall this back. Let's say package info is equal to help index list get package. And return, no, let's say this. Package is equal to package if package info is none, else package.name, I think, is the field in that thing for help data package. Oh, sorry, description. Okay, so maybe I'll reload. Oh. Who's the smooth party? I'm the smooth party. Oh, we didn't get in there very long before we found a stupid error. There we go. Hyperhelp current help. Oh, it's got a problem. Stir object has no attribute description. Because I also broke that. Even the simplest changes are hard if you are a fool. Viewing help for Sublime Text 3 API documentation. Perfect. Now, just as a test, you can see the errors there. As you see, I totally have a window over on this desktop that has a console in it, as is my want, so that I can notice errors happening and feel like a fool for having encountered them. I'm going to close that because we don't care. And if I said, whoops, if I said view.settings.get HH package, it's that. And if I set it to Sublime something, important to type it correctly when you're not going to do anything with it. Now various help would likely be broken. This is something to check. That says it links to Sublime API selection.txt selection, and now this says it links to Sublime something because it can't look up the package, which is a good fallback. Sublime API selection text selection. I'm going to go ahead and set this back to Sublime API. Now it links to selection text selection. It doesn't need to tell us the package because it's already in there. That's cool. That was the thing that I intended to have happen and forgot about. Okay, so that is good. That's nice. Let's just go ahead and check out branch master here. So syntax tweaks. Oh, I guess I should also point out that I merged the bookmark branch in, which is all of those commits we did in the last couple of streams, but I haven't pushed it up yet because I need to merge the syntax tweaks branch in, and I renamed the syntax file as a part of a bookmark change to be able to add a settings file for the hyperhelp package, and the syntax tweaks thing changes the name of the file. So there's going to be some hell to pay there merge-wise, and I've been sort of putting it off. But we'll just quickly say change the package displayed in, what's that command called? Current help. In current help. Previously, the hyperhelp current help menu command would display the name of the package currently being viewed. This has now been modified so that it instead displays the description of the help package if possible. Where possible. Okay, now I can check out branch history extensions and merge branch master fast forward only. Okay. Now we're ready to rock and roll. What was it I was going to do again? I was going to add a history command. Now this may be the point where we modify this somewhere as a part of these changes so that the hyperhelp navigate doesn't take a nav of follow history, and maybe there's a hyperhelp history command that takes a history type. Here's something to check, I suppose. In all of hyperhelp, do it that way. How about? No, do it that way. How about? Where all does this appear? It appears as an import, it appears in this command, and it appears in the core. So this is actually the only place that's calling this thing, which is fantastic for our ability to screw around with what parameters it takes. That's good. So we might actually change this to, instead of a hyperhelp navigate command, there might be a hyperhelp history command that takes an argument of clear, jump, and navigate with a forward and a back type argument. That sounds like it might actually be some sort of good plan in its own scary way. Now, I'm doing these as window commands, am I? Well enough, except for some of them that are application commands, because we don't need too many of those. Only a couple have text commands because it needs to get an event, so that one needs to be a text command. This one's an application command because there only needs to be one. I may have mentioned this in other streams, but the main difference between a text command, a window command, and an application command primarily is in when the command is instantiated and how many instances of that command are created. There are also a couple of other slight differences. So an application command, exactly one instance of that command class is ever allocated, period. So no matter how many windows you have open, no matter how many views you have open, how many files you have open, exactly one instance of that class is created. Window commands, there's one instance created for every window created in Sublime. So right now there's two of the current help command because it's window specific. So we can see over here in this window, It says no help currently visible in this window, but there is help currently visible in this window. And that's just a consequence of it being a window command. Each of these two windows has its own instance of that command. And a text command, one instance is created for every file that's open. Now, apart from that, there are a couple of minor differences between all of the commands. Only a text command gets an edit object sent to its run method, which is required to call any of the API functions that modifies the buffer. Um, you need to provide that. It's what allows Sublime to know what commands are editing the buffer so that when you come up to here, it can say undo insert characters. And over here in this view, it can say undo hyperhelp internal process links because that's the last command that was executed when this command was set up. Although you can't undo anything because you can see it saying down there that it's trying to do something. It's trying real hard, but it can't because the view is read only. And the other difference primarily is that an application command is the only kind of command that can be checked in a menu. And an example of that is here. This command here that says what the tab width is, and this one that says to indent using spaces, those are implemented with application commands. And that's the only way to make a command entry appear that way. Otherwise, all the commands are more or less the same. So it really matters if you need to do something in a specific view to edit that view, or because you want information about the view, like its name or its syntax, use a text command for that because you automatically get an argument named, or sorry, not an argument. The class has an instance variable named view. So self.view, which is the view that it's executed in, and that's always related to wherever the command is executed. Similarly, window commands have a window attribute. So self.window is the window that the command is executing in. Application doesn't get one of those. Hyperhelp, what do we want to call this thing? Hyperhelp history command. That sounds like a thing. And we'll make this one a window command because it is specific to the window. This command is for working with history in hyperhelp help views in a myriad of interesting ways because we don't actually know yet. And it's going to need a run method that does something. I guess I should probably name it run in that case. Okay, and so far so good on that. Now, what is the first thing we want to do? We're going to want, let's say, an action argument. So we know what action should the history command take? Should it go forward? Should it go backwards? Should it jump, let's say? And we'll add a new one called index, which is used for some arguments and not others. So we'll go ahead and default it to a value so you don't always have to provide it. Okay. Now let's say if nav is the docs. Okay. This is something also I mentioned in my last stream. The description method is what's used to change the caption for a menu entry based on text that you yourself provide. Only usable in cases where the command is in a menu. This doesn't work in the command palette. And it only works when the menu entry doesn't have its own explicit caption. The default value, if you don't implement this method, is to return something that is the name of the command. Which is based on the name of the actual class. It's split into words in the same way that the class name is snake cased into an internal command name. The documentation says that you should return none to get the default value. That makes Sublime log a type error in the console every time the menu opens, and it drives you nuts. The internal implementation of this in the command class returns an empty string, so that's what that's doing here. Now here, if we're assuming HyperHelp Navigate is no longer going to have a follow history of as an available nav, because we have it in our own thing, then this description method right here, oh, you know what? Maybe we actually want to change this slightly differently. The action is the action you're going to take, which could be forward, backwards, or jump. And this would be an argument that say it doesn't have a default value because, what did I say? Argument could be forward, backward, or jump. So yeah, okay. Well, we'll leave it that way for now. So the description method here is only happens when the command is follow history, which is what that does. So this entire description command can come out of this class entirely. And come down here into this class. And we don't have to say if it's not follow history. What are our actual available navs going to be? Let's go ahead and copy that in here too. And we'll call it available actions in this one. Did I do that right under the, yeah, I did. Okay. Like so. Wait, why was that indented so much? Oh, because I indented it the wrong place. All right, fair enough. Available, whoops, actions. And the available actions will be next and prev and jump. Let's say also clear, because that's going to be easy to do. That can just pass now. If nav is in next prev, that's when we care about something. And if nav is not in next in prev, because, and this is something that may be subject to change as we go forward, as we do. We if let's say this, prev equals true if nav equals prev else false. Let's just turn that into the Boolean that's already used here for all of this stuff, because there are a couple of places where it needs to know this as a Boolean. And this is the thing that I was pre-thinking about and not talking about. Maybe we want the navigation to be jump and the argument to be forward or back or true or false or something. So we'll do that. Now the template says back if it's previous, else forward. It finds the help view. It returns just the template with nothing, which it does if there's no help view, which again we saw in the other window. And it can return the template also if you're at the beginning, and if you're at the beginning of the history and you're told to go forward, or you're at the end of the history and if you're at the beginning of the history and you're told to go backwards, you can't do anything, so it's just going to say back. If you're at the right-hand extreme end of history and you're told to go forward, you can't, so it just returns that. Otherwise, it makes the appropriate item. We probably also want to change that from the name of a text file to the name of the file that's associated with it. That's definitely something that didn't exist at the time that I originally implemented this history mechanism. So that is going to be enough for that. We want, there an is enabled? Ooh, if nav is follow history, which is what it's going to be. So we can copy this also down to our little class here. Did this come before description? Where's the little mark in the, yes, this came before the description. So we're going to copy that and paste it here. If nav is follow history, yeah, that's the same as this one. This is making me think that this clearly needs to be here. So let's see. If nav is in next or previous, then get the settings, get the history position, and make sure we can move in that direction. False if we can't, true if we can. And up here, in the place we copied this from, we don't need any of that because we're not following history in this one anymore. And we also don't want this because we're not following history anymore. That help may also be wrong. And we want to remove that. So let's cut that and we'll just go ahead and drop it into our run method here. For the time being, even though it's not particularly a good idea because that argument doesn't write, so it's going to be mad. Oh, it's also already mad because I forgot that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at this command. It can now find an anchor, which is the command that allows it to you to do this, to jump to anchors in the file, and it can follow links, which is what makes that work. History is now currently broken because I've removed that particular item from this command. So if you've told it to go forward, do that. Otherwise, for the time being, because there's only two, this can just be else. Because is enabled, make sure this command is only enabled when there's a help view and the navigation that you provide is actually in the thing, right? So that is no longer needed. Anchor nav is the one, follow link is the other, all the rest of the code is gone. And now for down in the history command, the available actions you can take in history are go to the next item, go to the previous item, jump to some item, and clear the history. So this would say if action is equal to, well, if action is in, and again, this really seems like something that should be an instant variable. If the action is in that, then we want this. And we'll line it up like so. So if the action is next or previous, then it's going to navigate history forward or backwards. When is this command enabled? If there's a help view, if there's not a help view or the nav isn't in the list of available actions, not the available navigations, return false. If the nav is in the list of next or previous, return false if we're at the beginning of history and we're told to go forward, or at the end of history and we're told to go next. In all of the cases, it's true. So if it's jump, it's true. If it's clear, it's true. If we're told to go next and we're not at the extreme end, it's true. If we're told to go previous and we're not at the extreme beginning, it's true. So that is everything we want. and return the default unless we're specifically saying next or previous. Turn that into a Boolean, use existing code to do stuff, and in a purely theoretical sense, with some key binding changes, this should work the way we want. And that part's kind of sad because there's a lot of those. So let's go ahead and search for hyperhelp navigate in the entirety of the hyperhelp package. Hyperhelp navigate for follow link. That's okay. That's a command in the slightly defunct help. That's a topic in the help that relates to that, so we don't care. And there's the Linux, the OS X, and the Windows key bindings. And here in the main menu, let's do those ones first. Because currently they're broken because that command does not respond to this thing, right? We moved it out of that command. So this shouldn't be hyperhelp navigate. It should now be called hyperhelp history. So we'll change that and that to hyperhelp history. And here the nav is previous, and that no longer has to be there. And here the nav is next, and this doesn't have to be here. And now in the world of the purely theoretical, we can go back to view.text and forward. Why is that grayed out though? Because that doesn't seem wholly correct. So let's just double check that we did do something stupid here. We'll go ahead and print, looks good here. And no help view or nav is broken. And here we say print help can't move in that direction. I'm guessing that this is semi-unrelated to this. We'll even open the console so you can see when I open the menu. Help can't move in that direction, it says for all of the items. So do I have something set up slightly wrong here? Why is it actually saying that 4 times? Is another particularly interesting question. Because there are 2 windows now. I've never noticed that before. Whoops. I should not have done that. I pushed the wrong key. That's embarrassing for a live stream. Let's go ahead and jump into the one in the config directory. Okay. Okay. Enter, enter. No help view or nav is broken. Ooh, look at that. Okay. Can't move in that direction because, and there's 4 of them. There's 6 of them. Boop, boop. I'm going to open a new window. That's what I meant to do. And let's go ahead and do that. Nope. All right. Well, that's not the reason. I don't know if that's necessarily here or there. Oh, I did not copy the appropriate this thing. That is some kind of embarrassing. Oh, okay, how about that now? There we go. And we'll go ahead and delete that, and delete that, and delete that. And we can go ahead and say, okay, so that seems to work. And got an unexpected keyword. Oh, did I not call it? I called it action everywhere else. That is perhaps unfortunate. So that one, 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 that one should all be action. And over here, this and this should be action. This and this should be action. Okay, now, how about now? Watch this. There we go. That actually worked. That's not how watch this is supposed to work. And we can go to settings, and then we can go forward to view, and then we can go forward again to selection, and forward again. We can't. Okay, so that is fixing the menu entry version of the command. And then we just got to do the sad maker in all of the key bindings. Find anchor, we don't care. Find anchor, follow link, follow link, follow history, follow history. That's these ones. Remember when I said that I wasn't sure? Let's go ahead and do that. If I had implemented multiple keys for this, well, we're going to find out in a second. Hyperhelp history for both of them. And the nav are both going to become action, but spelled correctly. And this one is going to be called prev, and this one is going to be called next. Get rid of that and that because we don't care, and get rid of that. And as a result of that action, navigation here on Linux once again works the way it's supposed to. Good, good. Let's close that. Next is for Windows. Oh, sorry, next is for OS X. Yes, I totally used the appropriate browser type action there. So let's see both of these. Again, we'll use that to refer our hyperhelp history. Both of those become action, and we want both of those to go away. And this action becomes prev, and this action becomes next. And we'll just double check that that used to be the one that said previous false, and that's the one that said previous true. So those should be okay. Now there does need to be some more work on key bindings before we roll a release. So I'm not too worried if these don't work out of the box. And I'm going to go ahead and cheat and do this. This is the one. Oops, that's the wrong one. This is the one I was looking for. Copy that. Oh, actually, no, what we'll do is go there and there and do that for Alt left and Alt right and copy it. And then jump into the Windows file at the appropriate locale. And for there and there, paste it like so. Oh, you jerkity jerk store. The jerk store called the running out of you. There we go. That is the unhappy. Fine, I won't do it the easy way. See if I care. There's a very, very short list of things that irritate me when it comes to using Sublime Text, and one of them is how sometimes when you have text selected and you paste, it clobbers, and sometimes it doesn't, and it just inserts that line. I assume it has something to do with having whole lines or something. It never seems to do what I want. I accidentally pushed escape there when I didn't mean to. And left is prev and forward is next. Okay, so now, whoops, that is not a help you. We'll go ahead and close that. So this works as one would expect. And so we fixed the main menu. That's the one we just closed. We fixed the Windows, we fixed Mac OS, we fixed Linux. This is a topic in the HyperHelp help, which is sorely out of date because it was last updated like 9 months ago or something. And this is the command that actually follows a link when you double click on one. So that one is also fine. So at some level, we have, well, let's also check here. That back and forward does what we want. So let's go ahead and I'm going to do this because there we go. It's on the right-hand monitor. That button should be on the right-hand side. I tend to get confused by that sort of thing. And let's go to smudge this bad boy up. And so we got 5 unstaged changes, and let's use this method to see them. So what did we do? We changed HyperHelp Navigate to HyperHelp History. The command changed from follow history to prev when prev was true, and next when prev was false. So we're all happy with that file. Here in the Linux key map, navigate became history, prev true became action prev, and prev false became action next. Instead of that, so we're happy with that. That did what we want. The Windows file is pretty much exactly identical. That's navigate to history and prev true to prev and prev false to next. So we can stage that file, and this is the same prev true, next, prev false, follow history became action, and hyperhelp navigate became hyperhelp history. And here, HyperHelp history is no longer valid in HyperHelp navigate command. We don't need to check to see if we should follow a link because there's only 2 available navigation types, finding anchors and following links. So it's either that one or this one, because is enabled only returns if the thing is enabled if the nav you provide is in the list of appropriate available navs. It no longer needs a description because the description was solely for the follow history command, which is no longer in the list. And we added a new hyperhelp history command as a window command with the available actions next, previous, and a couple that don't exist yet but are going to. So we're going to go ahead and let that slide. And if the action is in next or previous, it's going to do this. And then we check to see if the command is enabled the same way as the other way. We look to see if there's no help view or the action isn't in the list of known actions, the command is not activatable. If we're told to go next or previous, then we return false. If we're told to go forward when we're at the end or backwards when we're at the beginning, otherwise it's true. And here we implement the actual menu entry, which is we can see here is either forward or back as appropriate, and the name of the file that's being navigated to. So we can stage that and then call this factor the history navigation out to a new command. Since we are going to implement some new commands in HyperHelp for navigating the history in the help view, the history nav code has been factored out, factored out of the regular navigation command into its own dedicated history command. And maybe we want to make one small tweak to this. We get in this description method the name of the package from the thing and the name of the file. Technically, it's right now only using the file. But here's something we can do. We can say package info is equal to help index list get entry dot package history data package. Yes. if package info is not none, and entry.file and package info dot, and again we look help files, return %s colon %s mod template package info dot help files entry dot file. And the theory behind that is the history now tells you the title of the page that you're going forward or backwards to. So if I go forward to the settings class, now we can see that the view class was going to be the next thing, and the selection class file was going to be the next thing. That's the text that appears up here. Theoretically, it doesn't have to, but there's now a linter that we added in one of these live streams that makes warns you if that's not the case. So let's say that's something that we actually want to have happen here. Those are the lines that were added. So we're going to say title is equal to entry.file. And here we're going to say title is equal to package info.help files entry.file. And then we can change this to be title. Okay, so let's reload that whole package just to make sure, and it still works. Back to the view class, that looks to be what is there. Back to the Sublime settings class, that looks to be the right place. Back to the Sublime view class, and we can't go back farther, but we can go back to the settings class. And now it's doing that by getting the history entry in the case where this would return none if the history entry was for a package that it doesn't know about, which in the general case can only happen if I was to be, say, in this snappy help file, I use browse available help to jump to help in one of the other packages like the color scheme help. Then I quit Sublime. The history is saved in the session, and then I go and remove the index or otherwise break the index for the API help. The history entry will still say that it can go to that package, but when it tries to look it up, it'll get none, in which case it'll just use the file that it thinks it's supposed to use as a fallback. So that's cool. And let's go ahead and stage that and amend the previous commit. And we'll go ahead and edit this to say along the way, a caption generated for the next improve navigation history navigation options was modified so that if possible, I'll say this way, if possible, the caption is the title of the help page that would be navigated to instead of just the name of the file. That whole operation was made up before the help system had a help header that had that, and also it was at a nascent point in the development where it was entirely possible, or I think each topic, it was back when hyperhelp was supposed to just be for override audit, and in that case each of the main help topics would just be in its own file, so there wasn't any need to know the name of the title. You would just know the name of the file was the actual topic in question. So that is looking good. as a change that has been made. Now let's say we jump to the clear action instead. Navigate help history. I'd say we maybe want to make a new item for clearing the help history because that'd be part of the API. Incidentally, there still needs to be a bit of cleanup work in the bookmark code because those API elements that I was trying to decide if I needed and if they should be part of the core are still part of the bookmark code. But part of the next phase after this, where we turn this thing into an actual dependency, is going to be rejiggering the core code to be more files and cleaning up the API in general. So I'll worry about it at that point. So if action is equal to clear, then we might say clear help history for find help view. And we're not going to have anything there. So what we need to do is find where this is defined and add a new one underneath it called def clear help history help view. We'll just copy all of it for the time being, and then we can go in from there. It should be 2. Let's add some help here. Again, we'll copy that as a basis because that looks like something that, okay. Clear the help history for the provided help view, leaving only the current entry in the list as the sole history entry. If no help view is provided, the current help view is used instead, if any. And it returns to bool to tell you if history was cleared or not. If not if the history positions changed, if history changed or not. So we use the help view, or if we find one, and again, if we just double check here, you can pass it a window. It assumes the currently active window and then finds the current view in the current window, which is the first window it finds that has the appropriate view name, hyperhelp, which has to start with that, and has the settings that say that it's displaying a certain help file and package. So you can use this to provide exactly a help view by calling find help view yourself for any particular window, or otherwise it just assumes the current help window in the currently active thing. And we are going to need the history position and the history info. We don't need this. We don't necessarily want that. And let's say this. Do we need to returns a Boolean to tell you if history changed or not. Okay, so do we need to navigate to another help topic as a part of a clear operation? No, we don't. We just need to clear history, right? So we're going to go ahead and go like so. Do we need to update the help history? Not as far as this is concerned, because this is the thing that takes the current viewport and caret position in the help and adds it to the current help entry in the view. And as a matter of fact, again, I can go ahead and jump to that here. I'm going to close this duplicate copy. Well, okay, maybe I won't. Append is false, selection is none. So if we were calling it with just a help view, append isn't false, append is true, and selection is none, so it just grabs the current selection. I don't think we need to do that for this. We could, but we don't have to. We're going to get the history position, and this is going to make a history entry from that. So now we can say histpos is equal to 0 because there's going to be one entry. And we can say histinfo is equal to entry. We're going to return true here. We don't need to do this because we're not being told to navigate. So this is going to do something, but it's not going to, we're going to print hist histpos and histinfo like so, and return true. And so that's what this is doing. For our own edification, if I say window run command hyperhelp history, and as the argument action is clear. Okay, we need to import that. At the same point, we imported this. Easy enough to do. Reload the whole package, go again. Global name prev is not used. Where is line 354? Did I go a little too? Oh, yeah. I don't need to do that. Okay, we get the current history position and the list of all history entries. Make a new history data named tuple from the information in the history at the entry provided. And then we're going to change the settings to set the position to 0 and the history information to that one exact entry. And we're going to save and reload the whole shebang. Now we can see that if I was to clear right now, the history would just contain the settings with whatever the viewport was at the time that we entered this particular thing, which doesn't matter because when we follow a link to go forward from this new position, the current position will be captured. So the position there when there's only one entry makes no difference. So if I jumped to Sublime, now when I do it, the one entry would be Sublime Text. So we can copy those, and we can actually short circuit this because we don't need, either of those. We just need to say help view settings set. The history position becomes 0 and the history becomes entry, like so. We don't need to print it, and we definitely modified history. Reload everything. And now we need to add it to the main menu, don't we? The main menu in HyperHelp. Here's maybe where we get hung up on what exactly this thing should be called. So let's see, a table of contents, help index. This is where the help history is. So we'll say we're doing it here. And that has to have a comma. And the command is hyperhelp history. The args are a dictionary where the action is clear. Whoops. We also need a caption on this in a way that we didn't before. We usually put that before the command when it happens. Clear history. What do we want to name this thing? Well, clear help history, let's say. Just for the time being, just for a second. So, that's how it's going to appear. Back to settings, forward to there. So we're in Sublime. I'm going to clear the help history. And now we can't go forward or back because this is the only history entry. But if I jump to selection, I can come back to here and forward and back and forward and back and forward and back and forward. And if I was to go here and pick clear help history, I can't go back anymore. So we can say clear topic history. No. Clear history list. Well, we'll call it topic history list. And maybe there's one more change that we actually want to make to this, because we can see right now it says clear topic history list, but it really shouldn't, because there's no history, right? So if action is clear and maybe I need this, this action needs to be from more than one. So let's move those two up here, because we're going to use them in multiple places. Oh, I should probably move that one so that actually works. Okay, and there's that. It's mad if action is clear and hlan is greater than 1. Oh, sorry, we're doing it the other way. Equals 0, return false. So now, oh, did I not, did I do that in the wrong place? No, I don't think I did. I think I need to maybe do that. Do I actually have more history here? Sorry, history length is 1. I still had the other one stuck in my head. So now we can't clear the topic history list because there isn't any. But when we follow this link, now if we want, we can follow it. We could go back, or we could clear the topic history. And now there's that. So that's that. Possibly that's not something that you want right there. I'm going to go ahead, and again, this is one of those things where the actual state of the main menu isn't fully decided yet, because I like the idea of having this over here in its own thing. Now there's a separator there to make it easier for you so that you don't accidentally hit it, perhaps. There's a little bit extra wiggle there. I don't want to make that prompt you. That would be irritating. It would also be nice if this was a top level menu item, but the only real way to pull that off is to have 2 menu resources. And I have this theory that because we need to bootstrap our resources out of our dependency into its own package when HyperHelp is installed by the user, it could have a setting that allows you to decide whether you want your main menu to be top level or not, and it would just automatically do the right thing there. Similarly, in the syntax, the code blocks for key maps and whatnot are currently using JSON, because that's a syntax that's definitely installed. Could be possible to ship 2 syntaxes that are otherwise identical, except that it uses package dev scopes for better syntax highlighting of key maps and stuff if they happen to be in help. And then the Bootstrap could detect if you have that package installed and bootstrap a different syntax out. So there's still some work to be done there. The other thing that we might want to note is if I go to HyperHelp here, we can create a bookmark, view the help index, browse help, help on help, table of contents, open bookmark, help topic. And those are the authoring tools. So there's nothing in here to browse the history per se, because you use the key for that. Maybe we want to add HyperHelp clear help history to this thing here. There's no next and previous because it's easy to do with keys. You wouldn't want to do it in the command palette. Maybe you want to do history in the command palette. I really don't like to use the menu if I can help it. So let's go ahead and also do that. HH Sublime Commands. like so. And well, we would, I guess, copy this action here. Well, I guess technically this action here if you want to be specific about it. Doesn't really matter where we put it. Let's go here. We'll go ahead and do that. I mean, like we're gonna actually do it this way anyway. First there's the caption, then there's the command, then there's the argument. And those join like so. So I can go forward and backwards, and I can say HH clear. Oh, did I not save the file? Oh, clear. Yeah, I also need to say this. Sorry, that's why. Hyper help clear topic history list. And now we can't do that anymore. That seems like something we like. I like the idea of having items in the menu. I actually tend to use keyboard shortcuts more than it appears in the live stream, partly because I'm pointing with the mouse and I'm talking while I'm working, which is not something that I normally do. And it turns out that I can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time sometimes. Okay, so what do we got here with our 4 unstaged files? We are not looking at the right thing. That was confusing momentarily. To the menu, we have added a hyperhelp history command with an action of clear to clear the topic history list, and we similarly have added that here in the commands file. In the core, we added a new clear help history command for clearing the help history of all but the current entry, which we're going to call good enough for now. We don't necessarily need to truncate the history if it's possible to clear it. And again, I don't know what a good setting for history would be. Now, this could probably use a little bit of cleaning up. Actually, before we actually do this, I'm going to quit and restart. Make sure the whole thing comes back. So I currently can't history anything. I can go to the sheet class, back to here, move down, go to here, move up. I'm still down there, I'm still up there, and I can say clear HH clear help topic list, and that works. And opening the menu doesn't cause any errors. That's commented out. Following a link and not selecting a link causes it to become available and shows us a going back and forward, and that's out. So that is all good. Come back here. We definitely know this is good. This definitely perhaps needs some cleaning. So let's go ahead and stage that. And we're going to stage our API as well, and 2 more modified files. Oh yeah, the thing we added to the command palette and the thing we added to the menu. And, well, that's not what I meant to do. We are going to commit all of these staged files by saying include the ability to clear the help history. This implements a new item in the something or other in the new hyperhelp history command that will truncate the history down to just the current reviewed help entry. This is made available in the menu and in the command palette, and as of right now does not prompt you to verify. And let's just jump back here real quick. We don't care about the menu. We don't care about the Sublime commands, which I closed in the opposite order. I'm going to close that core because we don't need it. And come back to here. Next prev clear. I was just thinking that is it necessary to test if it's in the available actions and disable if we're testing two of them and one more. Jump also should be in this list, I guess. Just because if there's only one history entry, there's no reason to try to jump to a new location. You're already at the only location there is. So let's go ahead and actually change this right now. And whoops. Like so. Reload. My caption went away. That's sad. View dot set name. There. Okay. And I'm just going to come back over here. Well, maybe we'll move that over. Reload, make sure it still does something. Can't go forward and back. Can't go forward and back. Okay, so we're going to go here and just stage that and amend the previous commit because we were already in the way. Then we don't have to do anything like that for the next one as well. And the jump is the one that we're going to pick next. So this one, going to use a command, or sorry, not the command palette, the quick panel for this particular one. Hopefully we're moving at a fast pace here after that 20-minute discussion at the beginning of the stream about what all was going to be happening here and how the history works in general, which I think it was good for me to do that because it's helpful to explain code, how code is supposed to work to help you work out bugs and whatnot. But we have only 51 minutes left in this stream as of right now. I didn't mention, but I started the timer an hour and 9 minutes ago, I guess, if I can do math. Else something. I'm gonna say self dot show history just for something, and we'll do it down here. Whoops. Def show history. I'm showing history. This is something I do a lot, as you probably noticed, so you can see it actually happening. So window.run command hyperhelp history with an action of jump says I'm showing history. Okay, that's good. Now we are going to have to, yeah, the Linux key map for hyperhelp and the OSX key map for hyperhelp and the Windows key map for hyperhelp, because there are hyperhelp authors in here as well, and Snappy. So in all of these, they're all going to be the same. So I'm just going to write it once here. Show the help history. So the history of the help view in a quick panel and allow the user to jump to a specific entry directly. This is may or may not be actually need it in the general case, but I want to have something like this in the menu so it works like a browser. And I like the idea of doing anything I could do in the menu, I want to be able to do in the command palette or a quick panel so I don't have to use a menu, because I often end up using the mouse for a menu, as you've noticed, instead of using the accelerators. And that's because I had a problem for a while where uh, there were menu conflicts amongst other packages that added things, and I kept being confused by stuff. Uh, and we can go ahead and, let's say, just copy this one, let's say. And the key be what? History? H for history. Hyperhelp history with args of an action of jump. And the context is you're in a hyperhelp help file and you're not authoring. That seems about right. So if I do this and push H, it's showing history. So that is doing what we want. We'll copy that, close this. It should go after the help topic for the parent. Should go here. And close that one, and it should go here. Close that one. So now that'll work regardless, and we can actually do something here. And this is going to show all of the history. The question is, do we want to somehow delineate what the current entry actually is? Well, let's worry about that in a second. So one thing we're definitely going to need is that, which is the list of all of the history entries, which we already know is going to be 2 or more things. And if I go far enough back, I can eventually find the thing. I focus the appropriate view. So it's going to be a list of these things. We really only care theoretically about these 2, which we will note are package and file. So let's go ahead and enter that here. Package and file. They're actually names of things. So thing.package and thing.file will get us something. Now, this is perhaps an example of something that could be done in a comprehension, but first let's say for entry in hinfo, we'll say items is an entry list. We'll say package info is equal to help index list get this, entry.package. If package info is not none and entry.file and package info.help files, then the title is equal to package info.help files entry.file to get the title of the page. Else, well, we don't even do it that way. Title is equal to, no, we won't do that. We'll do this. Else title is equal to %s in %s mod and entry.file entry.package. No, maybe we don't even want to do. Well, it'll be redundant, but that's okay. I'm just thinking ahead to the fact that I want to say items.append a list of items where the first thing is the title and the second thing is entry.file, say. And we'll say from pprint, import pprint and pprint items and remove that, and we can see this global name settings is not defined. Oh, my console is all hoop-de-doo. Oh, yeah. Whoopsie. I need this. And sorry, I need this and this, both, prior to this. So get the help view, get the settings from the help view, get the setting from the settings of the help view. Now in our is enabled, it's only going to work if help view is not none. So theoretically, this can never happen. Is enabled might be called distinctly from description. So yeah, I think there's a reason why I did that. But okay, so now this is the thing. List object has no attribute package. Oh. Right. I forgot. You got to do this. Well, I don't have to do that. Why did I do that there? What the hell? Because, well, I got lost in thought there for a second. The setting, as we saw back here, stores this data. It stores it as a list because you can't store a named tuple in a setting because the core doesn't know anything from that, and it needs simple types to be able to proxy back and forth between the main Sublime executable and the plugin host. So this line is making a named tuple from the list entry at the given position. And if that is the case, is there a way for me to, okay, and I guess if I enumerated this, index and well, let's say info for that, and entry is equal to history data make from info. I don't need to iterate it if I'm going to do that. Okay, so, or I don't need to do it that way. For info in hinfo, we don't need to do. I was sort of pondering in my head if there was some way for me to do the enumerate and do that on the fly without doing it in the list comprehension. So I think that's probably the issue with that. Let's just try it one more time. There we go. Now we're seeing what would appear, which is the title of the page and the file that it's stored in. Unless it can't look up the package, in which case it would be something different. So just temporarily, if I change this to is none, when I do this, sorry, took the wrong word out. If I temporarily did that, now we can see it saying view text in Sublime API in view text, which doesn't need to do. But this will only happen if I can't look up the name of the thing. So that's sort of a super condition that shouldn't necessarily happen, and there's not a lot we can do about it when it does happen. Now the question is, do I want to change this? Okay, let's say, how did I set this up? Title is that, and package is equal to package info dot description. Let's say, and here package is equal to entry dot package, and instead of entry dot file, we might say %s in %s and mod that to entry.file and package, so that it says sublime.view class, and then underneath it, it says view text and Sublime Text 3 API documentation, and Sublime module sublime.text in. And again, if this said, if it was none, then when you do that, it would say the same thing for both, which is perhaps not what you want, except that Sublime gets really mad if entries, some of the entries in the quick panel have 2 lines and some of them don't. So maybe we change this slightly. We'll change this to description is equal to empty, and here we want this. This would be description instead of package, and here, oh, I'm doing these in the wrong order. Shoot, okay, I'll put that up there. No, we'll leave it the way it was for just a second. This should say if it is not none. Yeah, so yeah, I did that in the wrong order. That one should be there, and this one should be here. We don't care about that. So if package info is not none and that, then this happens. And we'll see one thing, and otherwise we'll see another thing. So now, in the general case, oh, did I leave it in a, oh, whoops, I did not need to do that before, but now I do. Okay, let's reload that whole thing. Okay, now, in the normal case, it would say, did I do that in the wrong order? Oh, sorry. That one's supposed to be that one. That's what I intended to do. So in the general case, it has no, oh, package info description. Good gravy. I'll do it this way. Okay, it worked. The top entry in the list will be the name of the file, and the bottom will say view.text in Sublime Text 3 API documentation, and then Sublime module, Sublime Text in. So that's the way it was before. But if I take this out, it's going to trigger the bottom one instead of the top one, and in that case, the top one will be view text in Sublime API, and the bottom one will be an empty string. That's important because it's possible for one of the entries to not have that information. We don't want them to both be the same thing. So that is good. And now, self.window.show quick panel. And the first item is the items list, which I named items because that's always what I do. And the next one is on select, which is lambda idx self dot jump Jump to entry. Now there may be a little bit more work to do here, but we'll get this part working first. And we'll say, we can just say IDX. We'll put it down here on one line. And we don't care about flags. We don't care about when the thing selects. We don't care about when it highlights. I think those can all be none. So just to test, so there's the two history entries. Oh, hang on a second here. Headphones make my ears itchy. Okay, so these are the two entries. We see view text and Sublime Text API documentation and the window class. One of these is the current one and one of them isn't. Could be a reason to want to iterate that with an index. Now that I think about it, because this is just the entire history entries and we don't know which is which. And picking one says object has no attribute jump to entry. So that is working the way we want. And we can say def jump to entry self entry index pass. So that won't generate an error anymore. When we pick one, and we can see that happen there. I looked at that in the module on the right. And we're going to change something else here. We're going to change index to -1 as the default instead. And show history is going to have an index, which isn't a default, but that's okay because it's definitely going to be passed with 1. And we can say this: if index is greater than or equal to 0, return self.jump to entry index. Now, what's the idea behind this? You can run the command with a jump and have it jump directly to a history entry. Now, this is one of those things where maybe it makes sense for the jump to say positive values are a forward offset and negative values are a negative offset. And then instead of next and previous, you could just pass jump with an index of 1 or -1. These are one of those things where I want to play around with it a bit before I decide if that's clearer in the code, because it seems clearer from a call point perspective, but if it's going to make the code in the command, like all of this stuff, more complicated to work, then I'd rather have it look be slightly more complicated or not look as clean at the call point and have code that's more readily maintainable. That could be my day job as a maintenance programmer jumping to here. So now I'm going to reload that whole thing and we'll see when I push H. Oh, actually, what I should do is say if entry index is greater than or equal to 0, print jumping to entry index. We don't need the pass, but we will leave a blank line and reload. So if I use this and push H and pick the first one, it's jumping to 0. That one's jumping to 1, and I can say window.run command hyperhelp history with an action of jump. And if I do that, it pops it like so and gets me to pick. But I can also say index is 0, say. And as soon as I do it, my is enabled does not have all of the arguments. Oh, that's right. I didn't fiddle them back the way they were supposed to be. That is my bad. This should look like this, and that should look like that. Okay. That's embarrassing. And the gist of that is whatever arguments are passed to run, those same arguments are passed to is enabled and description so that you can determine if a command is enabled based on the arguments you get, which is clearly what we're doing here. And also the description can change based on the argument, which is what we're doing here. Obviously, we need to know what that action is to know if we're going forward or backwards. So because this didn't have an attribute of index, but I invoked the command with it, it tried to call like is enabled and had a problem. So now that should be solved, and that should jump initially directly to 0. That should jump directly to 1. Now here's something else to test that looks like it's working, but it technically shouldn't. And entry index is less than or equal to, okay, we're going to need to pull this information again as well. So now we're thinking maybe we need some sort of helper for that, but that'll be good enough. Less than or equal to len h info. Do that. So this doesn't do anything. 1 does. Does 2? Did I off by 1 it? 2 does work. So this should just be less than. Okay, so 2 doesn't work. 3 doesn't work. 1 works. 0 works. -1 doesn't. And -1 shouldn't. I would have thought. Oh, that's right. It ignores the argument and prompts you in that case. Okay, yeah, that is working as expected. Actually, let's just double check. Show history is this. The reason that is the case is so that you don't have to pass the index and it prompts you. So any negative index, or I could actually do that here and perhaps save myself a little bit of hassle. Let's do this. If I went too far. If entry index is greater than or equal to 0 and index is less than, then immediately jump to that entry. Now, it doesn't have to do that here. It only has to be greater than or equal to 0. Because if you close the quick panel, it calls your callback with an item of -1 to tell you that it's canceled. So that should still work the same, but be a little cleaner. So -2 prompts you the way that you would expect because it's not a valid index. -1 doesn't. 0 should work. 1 should work, and 2, because it's not valid, should prompt me. Okay, so now it's more orthogonal. Previously, if you passed a value that was too big, it would just do nothing, but if it was too small, it would prompt you. Now, anything that's invalid prompts you, and anything that's valid immediately goes there. So that's good. Now, how many times do we have settings, help view settings, settings.get hhist here just in this code? It appears in, well, technically it appears here. But we need to look up the help view anyway. and it's used in the description to get both, and it's used in here to get one of them, and here to get one of them. So let's say we did something like, maybe we will put it, because it's used in multiple places, we'll put it here. Let's say def get history info for self and help view. And if help view is not none, and well, we wouldn't do length of the settings. We would get the settings and return this and this. Okay, and let's say that tights up to there. So this will get the history information for the help view you provide. So here we can say hpos, comma h, well, we'll say, what was it called in other places? H info, yeah, is equal to self.getHistoryInfo on the help view. And we don't need that, or that, but we do want to say hlen is equal to len of hinfo, which is what that's returning. So that part's a little tighter now. And here we need just hinfo, so we don't need hlen, we don't need any of those. So that is nicer to look at automatically. And here in show history, we need to do this. We don't need settings. We don't need hinfo because we already got it. So we can do that. And we can do it here as well. We don't need any of those. Now this is getting us stuff that we don't necessarily need. And just to verify, history still goes forward and back, so we haven't broken anything by doing that, but we will perhaps quit and restart. I'm going to do something here. I'll even show you the window, because this is the console window that I used. And what I've been doing for today is saying set name console view. But because this is a transient view, that gets clobbered. So view set scratch true, and there. Now it can't throw that away when the window closes. That's going to make me happier. And then it'll say nicely console view there. So you know which window has the focus. Everything seemed to have loaded. History still goes forwards and backwards, so I haven't broken anything, and I can still do that. And that said it jumped to 1, and that said it jumped to 0, as we can see there. So that is looking, let's say, like we want. Now the last maybe potential cleanup there is what? This calls find help view, and then get history with help view, because it does need a help view. Here, it's checking if help view is none, and then it passes the help view. It didn't necessarily need to get the help view here, except for that test. But if this already knew what the help view was, you could test if hpos was none and return template in that case. And here we got the help view just to pass it. Well, this is another potential we could say that guest history and for help view is none, and then say help view is equal to help view or find help view, like so. And then if there is a help view, do that. Otherwise, return none. Now, where are all the places that this gets called? Here, we can pass a help view because we definitely had to get one. Here, we didn't directly have to get one. We could do this and then say if hpos is none, return template. Help view used anywhere else in there? No. So this doesn't even need to pass one. It just automatically gets the help view. So that code is a little tighter. And here, again, help view is used there only to be used there. So we can delete that and go like so. For show history, this one is only called when we know that is enabled return true, and is enabled returns true only when there's a help view. So we don't care about testing the value there. And here we similarly don't need to do that. So that's just a little bit of refactoring, a little bit of this does not have the correct indent. There we go. It was real mad about that for a second. And now just to verify, we will again quit and restart. And look, the console view stayed console view, though window manager insists on putting them in the wrong order. The console is happy. In the menu that says I can't go back, but I can go forward. And now that I've gone forward and it worked, I can't go forward, but I can go back, and it shows the appropriate thing. I can use the keys. All of the code still works. And if I jump to position 0 or jump to 1, both of those work. And if I did this, it's going to prompt me, which I would expect. But if I did 0, it jumps directly to 0, and 1, it jumps directly to 1. So everything is good. This is the part where we actually have to be able to navigate to a different point in history, which is where this gets a little tricky. Realistically, just thinking about this, I may not actually need this line here at all. Up here, when the available action is next or previous, and it calls navigate help history, finding the current help view, and then going forwards or backwards. Again, if I jump to that over here, we can see what it's doing is finding the help view. If it's none, it leaves. It gets the appropriate history position and history info, make sure that it can actually do it, and then it does this show help topic thing here. Now, one thing I could do is modify navigate help history to take an index argument that was an offset, the same as that command. I could add a jump help history that just does this part. Maybe that's an interesting API endpoint. Or over here in the command, in response to show history, I could just call show help topic with the appropriate package and file and history set to false. And then redo this. I think I like the idea of the same way we added clear help history. We might say the same thing here, def jump help history in the help view and hist index. And again, we're going to go ahead and copy all of that and paste it here just for the time being, and then say jump to a specific point in the help history for the provided help view. If no help view is provided, it may not change if the history index is not valid, for example. So there's this, getting the help view or finding one if one wasn't provided, which is very similar to what we just did in the other window. If there isn't one, return false. We were unable to do anything. Do we care about the history position? We're going to need the variable, so we're going to say yes. So we're just going to say if hist index is less than 0 or hist index is greater than or equal to the length of hist info, then return false. So if the history index to jump to is -1, -2, -3, no, you can't do that. If there are 2 items in the list, the valid indexes are 0 or 1. So if you pass 0 or 1, this doesn't trigger. If you pass 2 or anything bigger than 2, the index you provided is greater than or equal to the length of the list, it returns false. So now we can say that histpos is equal to hist index. We don't need to do that. That's finding the entry. It's updating the current entry and then doing the stuff that it needs to do and returning true. Now, do we need, where is histpos used? There, there. And here we need to set it. So it does need to be a value. We don't necessarily need to pull this here. Again, if I do that, if I didn't grab the value of the setting, I wouldn't have to assign it. I could pass a hist index here to make the entry and pass it here to set it. So let's do that. So we'll get rid of that. We'll get rid of that. And this become hist index. And then we can actually do this. And we'll call it new histpos. And that seems to have reloaded. So let's just vet the change, find the help view, leave with false saying we couldn't do anything if there's no help view. Get the information on all of the history entries. If the new history position is invalid because it's before the start of the list or it's off the end of the list on the other direction, return false. Otherwise, make the entry, update the current history entry. Well, I guess the thought occurs that it should, okay, this is why we do this. We're going to do this here as we do. So that's what it was doing. If the new history position is less than 0 or the new history position is greater than, it's off the end of the list, the new history position, or new histpos is equal to histpos. And now we're going to change all of these to new pos to make that shorter. So get the help view that if a help view wasn't provided, ask for one. If there's still no help view, we couldn't do anything. Get the current history position, get the current list of history entries. If the new entry is off the beginning of the list or off the end of the list or whatever the current entry is, then do nothing. No need to do anything right now. You're already at that position. Make a new tuple from the entry that is in the position that we're going to jump to, which is the new thing. Update the current entry with to update the viewport and cursor and whatever view is current in here. Then showed that help topic, not modifying history, and if it worked, reset the selection to what the history entry said, and reset the viewport to what the history entry said, and then manually update the history position, and it worked. So if we do that, I'm going to copy that, and we're going to go into this file way up here near the top, and do navigate help history appears right there. So let's go ahead and say from.core import clear, and we'll change this to jump help history. Is that what I called that thing a second ago? Yes, it is. Okay, so that will do something. And then way down at the bottom, we can say jump help history. And we're going to pass none and entry index, because passing none will make it look up the help view the same way we did. And what will this buy us? So if I do jump to the history, I want the window class. Here I am in the window class. I'm going to move it up to show quick panel. I'm going to pick view class. Here I am in the view class, and I'm going to move that up to there. And when I pick window, it jumps down. So that is doing what we want. Now this can be cleaned up, but first we're, let's say, happy with this particular implementation and the fact that there's only 7 minutes left in this stream. And let's see, in modified files, what did we do? We added hyperhelp history jump action, hyperhelp history jump action, hyperhelp history jump action. So we can stage that file, we can stage this file, and we can stage this file. And in the core, we added a jump help history. That seems to do what we want, so we can stage that. And here in commands, we imported that command. We've implemented a new way to get help info, which theoretically, if we wanted to, we could try to factor that out into its own commit, but I don't care that much at this point. We changed that default to -1, and we are now implementing the call to show history. Those are all our refactors to change how we get history to call one function. So we're trading these lines once up here in a more readable fashion for having multiple duplicates here, which again is one of those things where realistically that should be have been part of the API in the core so that nothing knows about secret settings except the core. But this is code that's kind of in the core, so it's one of those things to think about when cleanup comes, when we start bootstrapping this thing into its own dependency. Here's the show history command. So that seemed to have worked. So we're going to stage that file, and now we're going to say implement the command to jump to a different entry, jump around in history. And so let's say this implements a new command, implements the jump navigation in the recently added history command that allows the user to visually select and then jump to an entry in the history list. Okay, now things that we can do. First of all, When I push H, I am and jump to the view class. Now when I push H, I can select view, nothing happens. The code knows that the entry is the same, so nothing happens. So one thing I could do is remove this one from the list of entries. Because there's not really any need for it to be here in this case, right? In which case this panel would just have one thing. Um, but what I could do, and because of the way this works, I want to add a couple more entries in the history just for us to have something to look at. View module phantom set phantom. I'm going to jump to Sublime module again and view one more time. As we can see, there are multiples of these in the history. The top is the furthest past, and the bottom is the most recent. So that one jumps to that position, and this one jumps to that position. We're keeping the file the same and modifying the thing. I like the idea of the top-downness of the history, but maybe we want one of these, the entry that's current in the list, to be marked as such. We don't necessarily have to block the person from being able to pick it, at least right now. But I think this is where we would say for IDX info in enumerate H info. And if we do that, and also add a colon here so that it doesn't get so mad the next time, and reload, it should still show things. And we can say this. If IDX is equal to HPOS, then title is equal to title plus this. So that's the one that's currently being viewed. Maybe I'll add one of those in there. That's the one that's currently being viewed, so hitting it does nothing. I can pick this one. Now the history says that one's currently being viewed. That's one way to go. I could try to make all of these items 3 tuples instead of 2 tuples. Maybe here's something that I'm not sure will work. I don't think it will. Yeah, it just interprets it as a tab. That's not as cool as it could be. Let's try this. Current if IDX. Oh. Boy, I really boned that up hardcore. So we'll comment those 2 out. So now all the entries are 3. Yeah, I don't like, if there was a way to have one have 3 and one not have 3, that would be where it's at. But I've learned the hard way that Sublime gets very angry about that. It assumes it's going to render them all the same. Frankly, I can't blame it. I don't like this. Oh, there's the 2-hour timer. Stream is perhaps drawing to a close after 2 hours and 19 minutes and 20 after 10. My goodness. Yes, that whole chitter chatter at the beginning really slowed things down. The time has, however, passed very quickly. So I don't like this. I like this better. Get rid of all of that. Seems nicer. Maybe we want it. change it to thus. The other thing that we could do is change that second line so that instead of saying phantom set in Sublime Text 3 API documentation, it says currently viewing. Maybe we actually want to change this. So it adds currently viewing to that one. I don't really like that. As far as I know, there's no way to have an item in this list that is disabled, so you can't pick it. So another thing that's possible here would be to just delete this entry entirely, since clicking on it does nothing, and then you just see all the rest of the history and not see this entry at all. But in that case, I would find that confusing because this is showing us the complete history in the panel. And if that's the case, it's weird. You don't know where in the history you are if it doesn't display, which is why I like this way better. I'm just not necessarily a fan of how that looks there. Maybe we could do something like this. So that it's more offset. It does make the panel a little wider. I don't know that that's necessarily particularly bad. So there's that. So I'm going to go ahead and stage those changes and amend the previous commit. And we did not add this to the menu. Do we want this in the menu? Let's say perhaps we do. We want it right above this. So we would open the main Sublime menu. Is this the one in HyperHelp? Yes, it is. Okay, so we would have that here. And the caption is jump to item in history. Now this is a temporary type thing. Do I have a, yeah, I do. Another way to do this, which is something that I was toying with, but I might like this better than that. HyperHelp history and the args are an action of jump. And we'll just go ahead and verify. Jump to item in history, and it shows it over here in this window instead of in that window. That's the one that's currently being there. These are all the things that are in the modules list. These are all the classes I was viewing. Yeah, there are multiple entries, but I could have been looking at different points in those files. Maybe these things should try to have line numbers in them so you know whereabouts in the file, which would maybe help you do something. Or maybe it could try to look backwards and find the text of the previous anchor. Those are things that could be done, but we want to mature the code a little bit and see. So that works. Let's also add it to the commands file. HyperHelp Sublime commands in HyperHelp. And, well, let's just say it would totally be this, wouldn't it? And, well, we'll modify this one and then say jump it to topic in history list. And the action is jump. So I can say HHJ, jump to topic in history list, and see, oh, look, I'm currently viewing the end. So I'm going to go to the one at the beginning. And HHJ, now I'm viewing that one. I'm kind of liking that. It's looking pretty sweet, I think. Um, so let's close that out. And these should have been part of that commit because they added the command there. So we'll stage that file, file, and amend that commit. And the issue with displaying the line number in the file is that all we have as a position right now is the cursor location where the first caret is, or the first selection in the buffer specifically, because it will store a selection and not just a single caret position. There is a view API function you could use to turn offset like that into a line and column, but you have to do it on a view that has that file open. So we would either need to open a hidden panel and load the help file in there if it's not the current help file, or store the current help line in the history information. So we're not going to do that. Now, if I look over here on my list of things to do today, we deferred truncating history instead of it being unbounded because we're entirely unsure of what a good history size is, if anyone cares. Um, and should there be a setting for that? What would the default setting be? We could go ahead and clear all the history. We did that, and we jump to a specific history entry from the quick panel. Now, the other thing that I had listed here was something akin to this when we go to open recent and we see the list of the most, oops, excuse me for bumping the microphone. I was scratching my nose, the most recently used files. And I could envision that here in this history, instead of saying back and forward, or in addition to saying back and forward, um, there could be a list of the last 10 topics in the history. Um, or the last 5 or something. And that's actually fairly easy to do, just because with this command, uh, with an action of jump and a specific index being provided, if we wanted to, like, this is going to disable the command if you told it to jump and the length is 1. Um, we could modify it to disable the command if, and maybe this is actually something we should do, uh, if the index you provide isn't valid, the command shouldn't be enabled. That's actually a valid concern. But here in the description, we could say, if the action is jump, then the caption we return is something similar to what we're doing here. Look up the name of the package description and the file, like we see here. We could gather this text at the bottom, or the file title, or the file title, and then in brackets view text in Sublime Text 3 API documentation, or whatever. We come up with something based on the index, which we clearly can do, and return it from the description method. And then we further modify this to have an is visible. And is visible always returns yes, except when the action is jump and the index is too big. It's an entry that doesn't exist in the list. And basically what we end up with is the ability to add this to the menu 10 times with values from like 1 to 10 as indexes or something like that. Um, and in them, any that specify history positions that don't exist would just disappear from the menu. So only the remaining ones were there. So initially there would be none. They'd all be hidden. Then 1 would appear, then 2 would appear, then 3 would appear. Each of them would gain a caption for their entry in the history location. And picking them would just immediately invoke the command. Now, probably we would want to do that in its own separate command, because the positions you pass, you want to be something like 0, 1, 2, 3, or something like that, or maybe negative offsets like -1, -2, -3. I think you want them to be positive offsets uh, from the start of the available history. But if there's can only be a constrained number of them, because as I've said in previous streams, you can't create an arbitrary number of menu entries based on dynamic data without dynamically generating the menu resource. Um, then there's a bit of an issue with that in that case. And you would maybe want to say literally the last 10, and you don't know what the index of those are. So you would want the index values to be, -10, -9, -8, so that they can index into the list from the end. But this gets in the way of this command being able to operate the way it does, knowing that negative indexes are something that it shouldn't jump to. And while that's possible, it's complicated and perhaps not needed if you have the ability to jump to an item in the history and literally see them, because this has more utility. This is going to show you every item and not just some lowly constrained number. And we have the ability to filter this list to find exactly things we're interested in. So I'm going to say that we necessarily don't want that menu item either for the time being, while we wait and see how this whole history thing shakes out. So with that, after this long 2 hours and 32 minutes of live stream, we're going to call this stream a night and come back on Sunday, where we will perhaps, unless I come up with other things we want to do, um, start the work of turning this code base into a dependency. Now that's going to be a lot of internal jiggering around of not only the structure of the package, but the contents of the files as well, which is kind of fraught with peril. And if we're going to do it in live streams, we're not going to be able to do it in one live stream. We're going to have to do it in more than one. So this may require cloning a separate copy in a sandboxed environment and fiddling with that one so that we can continue to do other HyperHelp stuff. But what will happen in that stream, we don't know. That's the current plan. But that is subject to me realizing that there's a bug or a feature that's missing, or not having enough time in the next few days to do the cleanups that I would normally do. But if you're interested in all of that and all of this package development stuff, feel free to subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. And assuming YouTube doesn't forget that I schedule the live stream like it did last time, it will tell you when warn you when I'm going to go live and tell you when I am going live. And you will get to hop into the chat, say hi, ask questions, and watch us develop packages here live in front of your eyes, bugs and all. And coming in the new year, uh, we'll be doing other live streams on other packages and adding more videos to my other channel, the OdatNurd channel, whose link is in the description, with more tutorial type videos, which are like these videos, but shorter, edited, and focused. So you don't get to see me writing bugs. I edit that part out and I practice how things are supposed to fit together so we don't have to jigger our code around as we go. I personally find utility in both methods, a top to bottom, here's how this works, and also the feeling yourself around, because I feel that it totally makes it easier to explain to people that if they think they're having problems writing code, everybody has those problems. It just takes practice. But that is all we are going to do for this stream. So thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to this channel, subscribe to the other channel. Pop any questions you have on this video or any of my videos, or suggestions for topics of other videos or things you'd like me to cover in the description of any of the videos on either of my two channels, or by sending me a tweet on Twitter at OdatNurd. And this time, let's say not only should you have a sublime day, you should also stay sublime. Thanks so much for watching, and walking if you walk. I walk. See you next week on Sunday.